called A Little Like Rasputin. If you don't know who Rasputin was, he was this Russian guy who was kind of evil, and they kept trying to kill him, but he wouldn't die. They poisoned him, they stabbed him, they shot him. He was just like, I'm going to live. So this is A Little Like Rasputin. Floating in the icy lake tonight, my brother dares the waves to deposit him ashore. Carried riptide to riptide, his subdued surface splits apart. His atoms break into confession absorbed by thunder. Like pepper flakes, a kick in each swallow, the churning. Life preserver carved around his eye. What a socket, what a socket. Even a tree couldn't blind him. And when he froze, they simply drove him to a bigger town to thaw in their hyperbaric chamber, a little like prison or a butcher's window. He was too big. There was no apple lodged in his throat. He wouldn't take his jacket off, even in the crematorium. That cold. And now my lovely daughter, Rose. Let me get my coffee, lovely daughter.
Alright, so a couple of years ago I did a project where I tried every day for 30 days to interview a stranger, and I tape recorded the interviews. Then I transcribed them, and then I took the words and I made poems from the interviews. So I'm going to read like 3 poems that are from other people's words. This first one is a guy I interviewed in a bar in Arizona, but he was from Michigan, so we talked about that. So, you know, before you were blind, in Michigan you could see heaven, billions of stars, mobility, and mansions. Maybe I just made this up, but the main thing is I'm a person and nothing annoys me. I was in Grand Rapids walking down the street when I saw this man and asked him, "What's my name?" He said, "Stars." We kept walking. After a while, words were flying onto a napkin. It really happened. I introduced myself. I'm not a Jesus person. I don't know anybody that's gone to heaven. I've always been fascinated with stars, though. Ever seen one? I saw one walk across the street. They say Jesus did this too, but I don't believe in that. I walked about a half a mile. I kept walking, and then I asked him, "What do you enjoy most?" He became blind later because he was walking, enchanted by stars. I believe I will turn into a star. I believe all people think about stars. He said no. Jesus, he told me, there's billions of stars. Do you still love it here? I asked. We didn't go too far. We talked about streets of gold. I needed 3 or 4 napkins for that. Right. This was a mildly frightening man in a park in Denver. I've worked hard my whole life. I am one of those people that have caught on fire. Got hurt bad. Broken bones existed ever since I was a boy. I used to ride around here bald-headed with no shirt, used to sing to Jesus every day right there on the hill. On the right side of the highway, there were herds of elk. I would go and sing in my grandmother's bathroom in the northern part of California. I moved to Portland, Eugene, Daytona Beach, Monterey. I've been all across America with a lot of broken bones, a little blue lighter, and a hatchet in my hand.
What? I have a question.
Yes.
Feel free to ask questions anytime. Is it a coincidence that they both mentioned Jesus?
Well, I'd say about at least half the people I interviewed. I had like 10 basic questions I asked, like, what makes you happy? What do you think happens when you die? Was one of them. And that's how Jesus kept coming up for a lot of people. I asked them if they remembered their dreams, just things to get them talking, I guess. This is a woman who I interviewed in Tempe, Arizona, in a park, who was on a walk with her blind nephew, who I also interviewed. I interviewed like 3 people who were blind, just sort of coincidentally. Anyway, so this is about her first love, Yurka. He's from Czechoslovakia, where this dress is from. You remember Yurka? He was from Czechoslovakia. He escaped underneath a truck. He walked to the beginning of Paris, healthy and nearly 7 feet tall. He was a real lover, too. Over there, we'd speak French, sit out under a train bridge, and eat sandwiches with our jackets on. A German lady and a violin took up the whole quiet neighborhood. Nothing like what there is now. It was cold and it snowed. I was only 17. You remember, Yurka. We had earthquakes. We made treasures. It was hard to fall asleep. I'll read a poem about a dream I had about having a baby.
Oh, good.
All right. It was really weird. Baby. Baby. The word slides out easier than the thing. A boy, feet first and strong. It began and ended fast. Being pregnant, I remember nothing besides the day of birth. A restless walk along the inland, blue sky of summer and insects buzzing. Pleasant and bizarre as a commercial for fabric softener, children play by the mouth of the river. The sun made rings in the water, the brown gold sand. I walked so long I saw my own childhood, my best friend and brother splashing on fallen logs, using them as balance beams. I did not want to leave. I wanted to see us build boats out of plastic cups and race them in the spring. But something ticked inside of me. I hurried back into town, past Bob's Total and Larry Savinsky's, through the deer blind and the beer warehouse toward my family's home. Once the door shut behind me, the baby slipped out, bigger than I'd ever imagined. He was breathing, and so was I. I stopped worrying and held him. I've always been so stubborn, but it felt good to have those arms in my arms. A bit of the yolk stalk connected us, wet on my ankle, covered in blood. We needed some help now, cutting. My mother was out by the bird bath, talking on the telephone. I wasn't sure if she knew I'd been pregnant, and I didn't want to bother her. I sat down below a painting I made 20 years ago, some blasé imitation of an Aztec blanket. I looked at the top of my boy's head. There was nothing it reminded me of. I tried to remember, but I couldn't see that far into the past.
I love it.
Yeah. Now, did you really have a son?
No, just in my dream that one time.
Okay, I'm going to read a poem about my children now that you've read that.
Okay.
It's a read-off. This is called The Liars. The oldest claims she spent her 4th year in a closet eating nothing but marshmallows and Twinkies. She nibbles at the table and fills her car with fast food wrappers. She hates me because her father isn't here to do it himself, and in that way she keeps his memory alive. The middle one won a scholarship with her essay featuring her tricycle snatched from someone else's trash pile and the cold image of plastic-covered windows. When she calls to say she's in Ohio, I know that means Mexico. The youngest believed a bar of soap was magic. He used it like a wand, one touch and he was clean. He was pure until he was trained to lie by his sisters on their behalf. But by then I was learning to spot it. He's my favorite. They share their lies at the fire pit where their grandfather lied to them about writing a Christmas song with Mel Torme, whose real name was Bob Faber, where he perfected the art of his actions looking like love. These liars happened to me and I lied back. I went to games I didn't care about, hugged them when I wanted to be alone, and tried to make them feel loved, though I didn't know what that was. When they left home, when he died, I began to tell the truth.
I'm going to read some poems that start out in Michigan and then travel away from Michigan, as I've done many, many times.
Many.
Yes. So, this is another name for a cabin, belongs to my grandfather. Curly's North. Once below the pump house, I drank dish soap. My nipples were bruised. The canned corn made my fingers numb. We cut the stomach from a rainbow trout, scales and water droplets scattered on the picnic bench. I hid behind the oak tree to brush my hair. I woke too early for a child. The deer hung in the branches. My foot was singed by a cigarette butt. Yellowed newspapers, mildewed dishes, ladder rungs nailed in maples. I never wanted to leave the quarry. The cabin walls were lined with encyclopedias. I fell asleep at the card table, knowing everything my grandfather told us was true. He kept a gun behind the mantel, and even his words smelled like smoke. This one takes place in a rowboat at the same place. Night row. After brown bottle and frog song, his unlaced shoes rest on the metal floor. Paint from the oars flake blue into her palms. Age has turned cruelty into muscle. She rows swiftly without break. Her body a whittling stick, a sack of stray stone. Her breasts bright moons she's held in place as she runs. The boat lurches and skims on the surface. Underwater lanterns bob between swells. She's hidden cigarettes in the lining of her skirt. He's kept the ocean folded in his vest, but she's seen this place in the daylight. It is just a small pond they keep circling. All right. I have one more in Michigan, and then we'll leave. This is in the fall. Past harvest. She works the garden to erase fingerprints from the broken husks of black walnuts, from sparrows who quaver in the sooty air. Sitting on the tree stump where a tire swing had been, she practices slipping out from under memory. As exotic perennials bloom the same dull pink, geese become bored of having their wings counted. She works to desire less of anything that can be lost. Leftover 5 o'clock Canadian mist, she drinks quickly at the back of the pantry, wary of eggs, acorns, children. Past harvest, the dead neighbor's wife kneels on the half-frozen ground. One's cheery.
Yeah, that was pretty depressing, Rose. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to ask them. We're here educationally.
Okay. This one's better. This is a road trip, okay? Rustabout tapes. Flowers fold frost, glass bottles bust, thrown from the parking structure to the alley where footsteps of the business class clopped like light perfumed horses. The clouds washed us into the swamp, hair murky from Wolf Lake, fears of autumn, loose tobacco, dead leaves, a hemorrhage in our fingers. We found a family of rabbits living in the lot of the War Bonnet Inn. Late December, Billings M.O. How far would I have driven to keep our movie from ever ending? Northern highway tunneled in snow, drifts high as the sugar pine's first branch. We perched in the cold, quiet as nightjars at the edge of the continent, watching the sky fall in flecks of peeled tempera. I'll read a poem about laughing now. I don't think it's funny.
You're going to kill me at the end of this time.
Oh, it's over there.
Okay.
I'll do it later.
All right.
Tributary. We planted our laughter in the neighbor's yard, between rain barrels, beehives. In the soft dirt that hens burrowed in, our laughter grew and grew. You kept the excess harvest in a desk drawer that led straight down to the creek. Our laughter slipped off above the mosquito pool in hot air balloons hewn from layers of skin. We snorted laughter off wet picnic benches as the elm leaves cheered and clapped their leaves. At night, the three of us, belumped shallow caves, emerged at daybreak with spittle marks on our necks. Now my laughter gazes out the back window, wipes its nose on my shoulders, turns up the radio and teases dogs at the door. When your laughter goes out walking alone at night, it leaves haughty trails of grammar, smudges the skylight with illegible notes. Everyone must have this lake inside of them. The morning I hold the only words I know, your elbows in my palms like fragile eggs. Okay.
Okay.
I will read one more.
Okay.
This one's about someone I knew once in Arizona. I tried to write the poem using all nouns. I think I cheated though. To take stock of things. Yep, I did. Okay. He said, those aren't nouns. He said, real life isn't all that. By the stove, over a pan of green beans. You haven't been missing much. The side of his face, wrung out dish towel, pearl pond, left ear, fire scrubbed, abrasions, mountains, bourbon, the rhinestone-encrusted cross, a newspaper, clipped picture, Keith Richards' freezer door, red denims, no address, the time, spent time, treated lumber, no lantern, a headlamp, exhaust check, registration and title, flag, U.S. of A, married once for 7 years, 7 years ago, the other town, a river, a hand siren, swung 2 girls, oil barrels of the same name, moon dust falling south of Phoenix, a scuff on the balcony at the airport again, near Christmas, only Christmas, 3-4, you could see your breath in the tire shop fire station window past the taxidermy motel, insensible thermal top hat with water. As a child, he painted the trunks of trees, a tin pail, a 3/4 inch house brush. How good it must have felt for them, he knew. A mink coat, a cartwheel, the breath of a dog is what scares him. He says he only gets embarrassed about the little things. Today, cut fingernails, for instance. And now, my mother.
Oh, why, thank you. I might use the mic because I'm hoarse-ish. I'm dedicating this to my class because it mentions origami. Thank you. It's old. Yes?
Before you start, you said that with questions. I have a hard time as far as the poetry to when it's read. I'm still trying to find out the next and tie them together. I'm trying to hear it better or make sense of it.
Anne is saying she's trying to hear poetry better and make sense of it more. And that's not working for you? Try harder. Okay. This is called Bad Knee in 3 parts, possible causes. 1, athletics. It burst lean and dark out of the cottage wearing a red and white striped bikini usually. Other mildewed suits hung on the railing. It took the steps by 2s. Each knee took 14 hits. That happened 5 times a day midsummer when cousins came to swim. It flew across the planks and skimmed a spatula across the water. Those legs fluttered and scissored miles, then baked on the raft while it read novels till evening drowned the ink. Just within hearing, hum of circling boy boats did not make sense. Extracurricular. I had to take dancing lessons. To please me, force yourself into 5th position. To please me, drop to your knees, spin and shout, tequila, which you don't know what it is. To please me, wear fishnet hose and high-heeled taps because you can't be tall enough. To please me, learn to pop your knee back in and don't complain. To please me, stand center stage in sequence next to nothing and who you are not. To please me, continue dancing. Number 3, fine arts. The origami artist hinged her legs for collapse into a nest which, 2 more folds, became a desk. He stacked the angles of her body into acceptable Barbie shapes with only 6 creases, twisted legs into extension ladders that titillated but were structurally unsound. He knew the knee fold could not hold, but left alone the paper was too big. She took up too much room. Folding was the most precise form of destruction. Now I want to read a poem or a story thing. It's a piece. It looks like this. It's not a poem, it's not a story, it's in between. And this is about how many of you took dancing lessons? This is for you. Dress rehearsal. A kind of glamour heated up under the lights along with the temper of Miss Alice. The pit band passed a paper bag around and the MC smoked, and the smoke was wounded magic in the follow spots. He blew rings and waited in the wings as Miss Alice's heels cracked across the stage and she bellowed instructions to the lighting guys. We were the first act, and already she was swearing, "Put the goddamn gel in and keep it steady, Jesus Christ!" She turned to us. "I'm sorry, kids." She put her cigarette out in her hand. We squatted in our starting position. I could see her skull through her dyed red hair when she stood just right. I heard the first notes of our song, "If I was a frog, I'd hop to town." But Miss Alice stomped her foot and marched to the center of the stage. "Could you tune the goddamn horn since the piano is too much to ask for, Jesus Christ?" We remained squatting. I was in the center, as I would be my entire dancing career due to my great height. Overhead, a light exploded, and then a trickle of water ran down stage from the left, and then one from the right. A ripple of whimpering and giggling, and Miss Alice said, "What is this now? Pee? Oh, Jesus Christ." My dancing experiences were great. I love them. I need to read some. I'm going to put the mic down. No, I'm going to read this one. This is about breathing, which is so important to all of us. A sharp inhalation begins life. A sputtering exhalation ends it. In between, there is breathing and there is breath. And air is there. Air does not need breathing. In that way, the equation is unequal. Breath is the delicious mascarpone that air and lungs make. Each breath is a treasure chest. Inside, 100,000 gifts to unwrap separately and savor. The moth breath of sleeping children, the snore of the toothless grandpa, thick lungs of illness, the pant of horses and energetic lovers, the phlegm music stopped in chords. O air, unenchant the apnea sufferer. The goodness in each breath, special blend concocted here in Michigan, rivers in it, sting for your nose. Last page of the poem missing. Pollen, a long frosty breath, clear heads, our exhalations white planets above our talk. We breathe each other's essence unawares, bus fumes and compost as well as lilacs, part of our inspiration. Free breath, clean air, the sponge inflates. We are the Great Lakes. Small factories in red hats and mittens. Icy crystals decorate air. We skate, ski, slide, breathing in sharp mortal stars, but exhaling summer.
All right, so the project that I'm working on right now is an abecedarian, which is a fancy way of saying ABC book. So I'm writing a poem for each letter of the alphabet, and the poems are all based on dreams that I've had. And if, for instance, the poem is for the letter D, all the letters on this side of the page have to be D. So they're all D words. It's really difficult, you could say. But I'm having fun with it. I have really weird dreams. I have a tape recorder by my bed and I record them every morning. And then I write about them to help me deal with them, I guess. So a couple of these have happy moments and some of them are just real messed up. So we'll start out with death for the letter D. I really did used to work at this gas station, by the way. Day shift at the speedway between Sorority Village and the trailer park. The drains in the bathroom are clogged, blue light of late fall and antifreeze in the air. Death walks in casual, teeth the color of creamed corn, his demeanor that of a stumbling carny. He doesn't get in line, but sidles up and slaps his hands on the counter. The drains, ma'am, the drains, he begins. We intend to fix them, but we don't have time right now. Look, he says, it's a bad habit, I need to explain. Do you mind if we chat privately? I call for second cashier and wave him around by the donuts. So what, I ask? I used the bathroom. He looks around sheepishly. I don't usually confide in people about this. I feel guilty. Sir, all sorts of disgusting things have happened in those bathrooms. No need to be shy. The hot dogs on the grill sizzle, burn. The line of customers stretches out the door. We're very busy. I need to get back to work. He sighs. I dismembered some girls. I sawed them to bits. I tried to destroy the evidence. I had trouble. I look back at Daphne. I hope by instinct she'll press the hidden alarm. Did any of the girls survive? I asked him, while behind my back I spell disaster in American Sign Language. Yes, ma'am, he nods. The girls are doing just fine. Daph sees me, finally. That's great to hear, I tell him. Daphne's face distraught, her hand under the register. She presses the silent alarm. I turn back to Death. Would you like a coffee? Yes, please, he whimpers. Regular or decaf? Regular, he says. Women always know how to take care of people. The parking lot fills with cruisers. Do you want cream or sugar? I ask. So, here's that one. This is a dream I actually stole from someone else, but it was really good, so I thought I'd use it. Inversion. I was looking for you everywhere. It was dawn here and dusk there. I hurried through the green double doors, down in the cave where you were teaching. The interminable hall ended at your classroom door. I slouched there as not to interrupt your lecture. Its subject, the myth of inversion, that one about the lovers who were never awake in the same time or space. There were only 2 students in the class, twin versions of our younger selves. I was braiding your hair, you were strumming a small guitar. In my lap was a book of verse, an unlit cigarette. I raised my old hand to ask a question. A bell rang inside the cave. The diagram of the myth was unfinished, its chalk outline already becoming dust. My young twin insisted you finish speaking, but you shook your head. It was late and time for sleep. Your young twin noticed me in the doorway, hand still raised. Do you have a question? I do. Will you love me when I am old and you are sleeping? I will, said your old self from behind the lectern. So will I, said your twin, don't worry. My young self began to cry. I walked to the front of the room and erased the board with my hands, in it the dust of your drawing. We embraced and I left 2 palm prints on the back of your dress, where the wings would go, in a different myth. Don't imagine me as an angel, you said, even if I look sweet asleep. You turned out the light, and I rushed back into the day, searching for a newspaper, a toothbrush. Okay. And This one is another dream for the letter C. It's for my grandfather, whose name happens to be Charles, but the poem is called Copper. Copper band around my grandfather's wrist, a cure for age or ailment, a lifetime of coors and camels. Mortality begins with tarnish, a vein's color leaking out, the gray-green smear beneath the cuff. From a northern Michigan cabin, he could see the Minneapolis skyline. He chased beavers with a handgun, used chiclets as false teeth. Picture John Wayne in a sports coat and derby hat, toothpick in mouth, so classically Midwestern. He left barca-loungers cast across forest paths so the old man of the woods could have a rest. Salesman, charmer, fabulous. On a clear day, he told us he'd live forever. Since he wrote that song, we can't help but believe him. Now he's a dancer in the circus, sneaks into the old house at night. Magician and amateur carpenter, he's covered the wood cabinets with sheets of copper. He's disguised himself as a steelhead in the creek out back. When he splashes, water reflects concentric ovals on the wall. This makes my grandmother cry, most often at sunset as the kitchen lights up like a camp stove as the family comes in for dinner. It was always so cold in that room, she says he always said as he comes whistling in and says it right along with her. All right, I have two more poems that I'll read. So F is for father. I was living in China for 6 months, which was really great and interesting for a while, and then I really wanted to come home. And I had a dream that my father decided to come pick me up in his truck. So, formerly an engineer, my father farms rabbits and chickens now. I'm gonna stop. I also had a dream that he had an app on his cell phone, and he was a farmer, which is not true. And the app would make the rabbits and chickens follow him around. It's really, really awesome. Now I'll stop.
I would like to see that.
Poem over. Formerly an engineer, my father farms rabbits and chickens now. He drives a white Ford truck. Most days he doesn't say much. The flocks follow him by instinct. Unspoken, a feeling. I never told him I wanted to come home, but he figured as much. Cutting through ramshackle forest paths, he arrives at my apartment with clipboard in hand, furrowed brow. I thought you might want to ride, he says. From Beijing to Michigan's only 3 hours. I found a little shortcut. I throw my bike in the truck bed, climb in facing west. Same old tapes in the glove box. Chris Christopherson, Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Wonder, the Ramones. 4 albums later, we're east of Chicago. A February blizzard swirling in from the lake. Fucking Illinois people, he mutters, exiting the freeway at Michigan City. We follow the back roads north to Kalamazoo. When we get stuck fishtailing at the bottom of the Howard Street Hill, the Ford shrinks to the size of a toboggan. We fall out. My father pulls it behind him gingerly on a frayed bungee cord. We walk uphill side by side. From far away, we look like kids out sledding. He fumbles in his pocket for a cell phone. At the top of the hill, I see a front porch. The light is on, so I ring the bell. The boyfriend I forgot walks sleepily down the stairs. I falter, turn back, and tell my father I'll be home for dinner. He nods and waves, his figure blurred by flakes of lake effect, the swaying traffic signal at the four-way. All right, and finally, the scariest dream I've had in a really long time. I just want to clarify, at the end, things are all right. I don't know if it sounds like that in the poem, though. Okay, I think I wrote this to try and feel okay about it. So it's called Ursa Major, which is constellation and also a bear. So, unless the bear comes in the cabin, do not leave the cabin. It is unlike my father to ignore his own advice. Yet he scrambles outside and unleashes some territorial wildness. He stomps and grins, unhinged in his lumberjack outfit. The whole scene is unwarranted and picturesque. Yet the bear becomes angry, storms inside and undoes the flesh of my mother and brother with a few swipes of his claws. I must somehow undo all of this. My arms strong in mercy, I use a curved knife to end the utterances of pain, of slash, of blood, of dark, unbearable. I slay my mother and brother, uneasy, dutiful, blue scythe. So quickly then I slay the bear. Ursa Major, I believe she watched as I finished what we started. Unblooded, unlivened, I rest them in the loft, seatbelts buckled under, everything empty in the rafters, what loss, what lack, uninjured wherever they are going. My father re-enters the cabin, unsure of what to do. I tell him if I can't unkill them, I must kill myself. He suggests I bury the bear first. Anything. Understand that I had to. I drag the body to the beach and set it in the waves. Ungraceful, beyond heavy, I climb the dune to my mother and brother and father up on top. Now we sit together unmoving on a swell of sand, and the bear's body bronzes below, unfleshed, statuesque, muscles defined, gorilla-like. The old green cooler rests between us. I'm a child again, and all is forgiven. The tide goes out, and the bear too. Unworried, its golden earrings catch the light. The potato chips will not harm us. The ketchup, the root beer, the nicotine gum. We wave goodbye to our bodies, chilled warm from unknowing. What bond in the after us? A family unhurried in the shine, away walking. Thank you. Weird, I know.
And this is called Unholy Sonnet, first grade. In the Fisher-Price Grow With Me Cook and Care kitchen, what's on the wall could be spaghetti thrown to stick for doneness, but we know it's not. Blue plastic cups brim with blood. You hoped only for a morning cookie, maybe a star with red and silver sprinkles, but bone splinters and baby teeth are your last snack. My kids' baby teeth were jagged pearls I saved to make a necklace. Later, I collected their wisdom teeth because they were large and fierce. For your parents, there is no later or tooth fairy. Your wisdom remains lodged in your jaws, in a tangle of rust drugs heaped in a corner. Squirms still, giggles erased. Your Christmas will be spent beyond us and grief in another place. This is a little book I wrote about the Garden of Eden, if Eve was the star, which I believe she was. So I'm not going to do any of the theological stuff. I'm going to read two poems from the middle where she complains about the problems with Eden. How can there be? It's perfect, right? And the first accident in Eden. Problems. Although Adam begs, implores, beseeches, only the dentist visits. The animals talk among themselves, yet all but the serpent are prohibited from speaking to us. Adam calls the thing an altar. He puts out peaches and lamb chops to entice company. The serpent's brain in Adam's body would be ideal. Adam's hope that there will be a God wearies me. The serpent and I are getting fat on peaches and lamb. I'm certain I was meant to have wings. I do not feel good about fooling Adam. There is still no coffee. This is called First Accident. The sun wasn't even up, and we were arguing about stupid stuff the way couples will from here on in. The sound of his spoon hitting the breakfast bowl, or who let the fire go out. It was too early to mow, the grass still wet with the spit from night, swallowing us the way the serpent ingests a hair, one big lump in its middle. Adam pushed the rotary mower. The caretaker says we're not evolved enough for the riding one he uses. Adam all stiff-legged the way that anger walks, not watching the terrain or even seeing it when he screamed. Blood walloped Adam's legs and snake parts danced all over trying to find each other. We couldn't tell head from tail, my heart breaking, my best friend dead, until I heard his hiss. This severed mess, a snake, not the snake. I think I'll read two about being like an adult. Women at 60. We prefer birdsong to our husbands' voices and love outdoors from behind windows. We are encyclopedias of plant names and history texts and pharmacopoeias. Just ask me. Once we ran barefoot through city parks and made love with anyone for the thrill of skin. That was noon. This is after dinner. We made it, we ate it, and now we have to clean it up. That is such a housewife poem. I need more housewives. Thank you, Hope. This is another one. There is no end to it. The dirt, the laundry, work, how it keeps piling up and changing. There's no end to it. Kids come and go and come back with suitcases full of paint and vinyl, then go but want their tents and weight machines sent after they've turned to trash or Goodwill. There's no end to the shedding and the litter underfoot and smell of animal life and morning bedrooms of mouth breathers. There's no end to food, dishes, food. No end of ass wiping. It must be in the hundreds of thousands now. Why wash the car? Why do anything? Because there will just be more of it. No end to it until the day it ends. Then welcome to the peace you always thought you wanted. Every year I write an anniversary poem for my husband. They are never mushy. Here it is. A couple of years ago I wrote about poodles for my anniversary. That was really lame. So this time I'm doing a potato, because that's like way more romantic. After a day of thought, skull backlit by information, I hold the old potato. How deftly it fits my palm. Under the faucet, relieve the pale eye stalks and grab the brush. Scrub away the fall and farm, skin born anew. Water growing warm at last, rising against nature from the basement. And a second potato, and another, until my fingers scald, which feels much more basic than braille irritation. Garlic sheds its paper skirt. Beans we grew thaw on the stove. But that first potato, just the way it fit, like an egg and rock married, like us. And I'm going to end my little part with a happy Michigan poem, a celebration of summer. Michigan summers are measured by the length of helium balloon strings escaping from used car dealerships. The number of black sweet cherry stands on Old 131 as vacationers head north. The intensity on the Scoville scale of roadkill skunk on a humid night. Seconds between thunder and the power outage, days before returning to the grid. Pilgrimages to the big lake with feet big as flippers and spare tires, built-in flotation devices. Measured by dogs' barks per minute times lots times time divided by patience, by sirens on the weekend, the fire trucks and meat wagons, same thing at the small town parades with vintage tractors, the mare, gentle horses, and a clown the kids try to ignore as they measure the fro of cotton candy, spun around a horn, and the distance from balls released to the duck it never knocks over. How many extra turn if the girls smile at the carny, measured in 4-H ribbons, 4-H and ribbons of many colors, bags of just shorn sheep's wool, jars of quince jam and smiles. It's the length of 2 mittens tossed on a puddle. It's measured almost completely by heart.
So, a crown of sonnets is where you have, these are 14-line long sonnets. So I wrote 13 14-line long poems, and then the 14th poem is the first line of all the poems put together. I'm not going to read them all, don't worry. I'll read 2 of them, okay? Landscaping. We begin to build the river. We stretch it over the kitchen sink from the spillway to the side yard. The bed is all bread dough and bird eggs. I never wanted more than then to take off my heels and makeup, to give you a press-on beard and pretend we were yuppies who'd gone out hiking. The rye crust on the banks keeps rising. I hear the baby cardinal feathers in the tea kettle brewing. It is Monday, everywhere but here. When I first saw you, I was thinking how much I wanted this picnic. See, that was happy.
That was good. I don't feel like slitting my wrist now.
Okay, good. All right, I'll read one from the middle. From Broke Nose Rim to Scab Knee Valley. You heard my laughter could mend broken bones. You heard my laughter from so far away, you chased it 6 miles down Owl Hollow Road. When you gave up on my laughter, it followed you to a party and took a piss in the hostess's koi pond, slipped in the screen door and stole a 5th of whiskey. Everything you heard about my laughter was wrong. My laughter hides adult novels in the dry goods section of the grocery store. My laughter could care less if you don't get the joke. I'll read the end. So this is all the first lines of all the poems put together to make a new poem. So, I wanted to be a mysterious bride. We tried it out in the field one night. It took a whole bottle of Johnny Walker. In the basket of my rickety bike, we began to build the river. After it was done, I sat down in the fire pit and the water started moaning. I tried to convince you I came from it. I never tried harder than that, the summer we lived in Antrim County. You, a brown-eyed wolf with no clothes, me, a frumpy yellow swallowtail. Our laughter could mend broken bones. In autumn, we moved gracelessly west. Birds smashed the cottage window glass. Not so happy. Thanks.